Hey all, welcome to this episode of A Good Problem to Have. I'm your host, Tyler Olson. Today we are in part 7 of 8 on our mini-series specifically designed to help you interns create your own personal financial plan. Going from medical school to residency, it's a big step, and I know you're making a lot of decisions. And so far we've covered what to do about student loans, taxes, employer benefits, cash flow, and what to do with available cash flow. Last week we talked about funding an emergency fund and modestly trying to increase that. And another area to consider putting excess funds would be into an investment vehicle. Basically, we're talking about putting your money into a place where it has the potential to grow, but it is also at risk of being I guess technically it could be lost entirely. That's extremely uncommon. But there is risk of changes in value, when you put your money into a bank account, it stays the same. Maybe if it's a high yield savings account, like in your emergency fund, it'll grow incrementally, but not by much. It doesn't go down in value though. Investing can experience losses. So it's important that you know that as you venture into this area of financial planning. The benefits of it is that it can grow, and if you invest appropriately and consistently over many years, it has the potential to grow to the point where it is not just keeping pace with the cost of living, but it can even exceed it, and that you can save for big things like a home someday, retirement, even potentially early retirement, depending on how aggressively and extensively you invest. But when you're in residency, you're not going to be investing now is not about getting wealthy or making a ton of money or investing so much that you're just blown away by how much money you've got. That's usually not the case, unless you're in a household where your spouse has a really high income. Your goal with investing is to make some good decisions that will have admittedly minimal big impact because the dollar amounts are small, but the real impact is the habit that you're establishing and maintaining. The habit of investing consistently. Letting that money get pulled out of your paycheck or out of your checking account every month. That habit is critical to build and be comfortable with before you become an attending, because then the real higher income comes in, and boy, it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming even if you're used to investing, believe me. But if you don't have the routine of investing, at least even a modest amount, you just don't have the habit in place, and all of a sudden you're going to be getting these big paychecks. Decision paralysis is a very, very strong force at that time. So you want to try to mitigate that and establish a good foundation. There's two primary ways I think of in which residents can invest in a way that's measurable and within your mental capacity. And I don't mean like financial smarts. I mean time to manage something. There's tons of investments out there, but a lot of them, they take management, they take research, and it's not like you've got a lot of time, right? My favorite go-to is your employer's 403b retirement plan. Most residency programs have a 403b program, or if it's a for-profit, like I'm blanking on the big one right now. I can't believe it. It's not RCA, but HCA. There it is. If you're associated, if you're at a program under the HCA umbrella, that's a for-profit, and it'll be a 401k plan. For our purposes, 401k and 403b are exactly the same. They're attached to your employer, and you have the option of contributing a percentage of your salary into that plan. And if you do that, you can have it extracted from your paycheck before the paycheck hits your checking account. This is a great way to automate investing and to get used to not having the money in your sights, right? It's already gone. It's kind of like when taxes get taken out. Remember when we talked about that a few weeks ago? Taxes get taken out and you don't even see it. You want that sort of same application with your investment plan too, because then it doesn't hit your checking account and you don't think that money's mine. This money's not mine. This money belongs to future me. That's what investing is. And so the 403b is a really great option in that case because it doesn't hit your checking account. It's automatic every 2 weeks or every month, depending on how often you get paid. And the plans have pre-selected investment funds that you can choose from. Target date funds are not a bad way to go. They're not ideal because they can be a little bit expensive depending on which ones we're talking about. Some of them are very inexpensive though, like the Vanguard Vanguard target date funds are not expensive. The other options within 403b and 401k plans are index funds. Index funds tend to be less expensive than the alternatives, which you may see in that fund lineup with your employer's plan. They're called actively managed funds. They're companies like American Funds, John Hancock, Franklin Templeton, MFS. There are hundreds and hundreds of companies. So I don't know exactly what yours has, but there's a lot of actively managed mutual funds out there. They tend to be more expensive. I am not going to use this episode to give investment advice, so you've got to figure out what is best for you. Do some research on those differences. Index funds, actively managed mutual funds. What are the pros and cons of either one? And then make your decision. The target date funds, the reason why I said that those are not a bad idea, why it was like, I'm not recommending it to anyone specifically, of course, but they are the default setting for almost all retirement plans out there because they're considered a solid option because it covers the bases. It covers stocks, which is a type of investment, and it has bonds, and then there's a little bit of cash. So anyway, look and see what those options are for you. Now, here's a caveat. If your 403b plan offers a Roth option, take it. By default, 403b and 401k plans, when you put money into it, that money is reduced. It reduces your taxable income. It's like you didn't get taxed on it this year. The IRS doesn't see it. That's a tax deduction. And so you don't get taxed on that portion of money. That's called a pre-tax contribution. That's a really great tool, particularly for attendings, because as attendings, your income tax bracket is going to be much higher, and it costs more money to get money to go from the pay stub into your checking account because it gets taxed. And the more income you have, those higher levels of money get taxed at higher rates. So pre-tax is a really good option for attendings. But for you trainees, presuming your household income is only in the range of, say, like 60 to 110,000, you're in a lower tax bracket. And so the alternative is Roth. Roth is post-tax, which means through payroll, let's say you're going to take 3% of your salary and put it into the 403b. That is what happens is that money is taxed. So say it's like $300. It's going to get taxed. The $300 is going to get taxed as if you got it in your checking account. Now you're not, because it's going to go into the 403b. But say that $300, it's going to get taxed. Let's call it $65 in taxes. I'm totally just I don't know exactly what it is, but we'll just say $65. So what ends up landing in your 403b Roth account is $235 because it got taxed. Then the money is in there and it gets invested in the target date fund or whatever you choose. But then it grows without getting taxed, and many, many, many years from now, when you get into retirement, that money on the Roth side, it does not get taxed when it gets distributed to you to be used as income during retirement. So it's Whereas pre-tax, you get the tax deduction now, but years later in retirement, you're going to have to pay income taxes on the distributions. So you're going to pay tax either at the beginning or the end of the life cycle of your invested funds. And when you're in training, because your tax bracket is lower, it's more advantageous to take advantage. That was that was superfluous. It's advantageous to take advantage of it, right? Okay, let me start over. It's advantageous to invest on the Roth side because you're in a lower income tax bracket, and you're more likely to be in a higher income tax bracket when you pull the funds out in retirement. That's why it makes sense to do that. Whereas in attending, you're in a much higher tax bracket, and there's a decent chance that you'll be in a lower tax bracket relative to that high attending income tax bracket in retirement. And so pre-tax makes sense to prioritize at that point. So when you're in training and your income is lower, try to do Roth. Now there's also, I'm still within the first option, which is the 403B. And if your program offers a Roth option, go with that. All right. This is different from a personal Roth IRA. A personal Roth IRA is a type of investment account that you can open separate from your employer. And it can be a good option. It requires you to open it separately. You have to choose the funds entirely. There's no pre-selected investment fund lineup. You can do up to $7,500 per year. And, if you're married, your spouse can do the same thing. Two issues that you have to be careful of, though. One, it takes some additional time to manage. Whereas the 403B, the Roth option in there, that's all set up for you. You just, with your employer benefits that you choose, you just also do that. Whereas with the Roth account, the personal Roth, you have to open it up. Fidelity's one of my favorites for DIYers. You go to Fidelity, open up the Roth. It's not hard to do. It's just an extra thing to do. And then you have to fund it and invest it. That's one area of concern. You just have to make sure that you have the mental space for it. The second is that if you are married or if you're going to get married and you end up filing your taxes separately for student loan planning reasons, go back to episode 1 of this mini-series, okay? Filing separately sometimes makes sense if your spouse is earning an income too and you're trying to keep your student loan payment down. But if you file separately, you cannot make a direct Roth IRA contribution. You have to use what's called the backdoor method, where you're making a contribution to a separate investment account called a traditional IRA, and then transferring it to the Roth IRA. So there's greater complexity with that. And sometimes, this may not be very common, but suppose you didn't think that you were going to get married in January. Say you're dating someone. I don't know. You're dating someone, and then January you're like, oh, I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to invest in a Roth IRA. You open up personal Roth, make a direct contribution, but then things happen, and then like in November you decide to get married, and you get married, and now the next spring you're coming around to do your taxes, and you're also doing your student loan planning. You're like, you know what? We should file our taxes separately because your income, my spouse, you're making $100,000, but you made a Roth IRA contribution back in January, which means you're going to have to take that money out plus all of its earnings and do what's called a recharacterization. It's super annoying. And all of this takes time, and you don't have the time. That's why I think the Roth 403B is superior to the personal Roth IRA. But if you're willing to go through the hoops of the personal Roth IRA, you could do that too. You can do the Roth 403B, 3%, especially if the employer is matching a contribution. That's where if you put in 3%, then your employer puts in 3% too. That is extra income from your employer. That's extra compensation that you want to capture. So make sure to check on that too. But say you've done that and you're like, you could keep going up. You can put it up to $24,500 per year into the Roth 403B. You'd be hard pressed to do that on a resident salary, right? So the ceiling is quite high. So I guess the only thing is that if your employer doesn't have a 403B or they don't offer the Roth option, maybe you want to consider the personal Roth IRA. But it's important to make note of these extra complexities so that you don't end up creating extra work for yourself. As far as amounts, you just want to do something that's modest because you're going to be forced to anyway, right? Even $25 a month, $25 per pay period, $100 a month, or whatever your cash flow plan shows you that you have extra. You put in a few $100s per month toward your emergency fund, and 3% of your salary goes toward the Roth 403b, something like that. The point is establishing and maintaining the habit and learning what investing basics are, which is what we've discussed today. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. For our last segment, part 8 of this mini-series, we're going to be talking about estate planning next week. Talk then.